Hi, I'm Mark Laux, Extension Weed Scientist at The Ohio State University. I'm standing in one of our greenhouses where we've been doing screens this past winter and early spring on both pigweed populations and ragweed populations we've collected from around the state. We have a history of glyphosate resistance in ragweed that goes back to about 2004 or so. So mostly what we do now is if we have a very specific request to test giant ragweed populations, we'll do it. Otherwise, we tell people, hey, if it's surviving glyphosate or whatever herbicide you're applying post-emergence, you need to pretty much assume that it's resistant. But one of the things that we've discovered over time, and I guess that's been over the past 10 years now, is that we can have different levels of glyphosate resistance in giant ragweed. So we can have giant ragweed populations that when you apply glyphosate, they're still controlled on the order of 70–75%, and they're stunted. And we know that if we manage those very intensively, even with just glyphosate and spray early at high rate and come back a second time, with the rest of it, we can get usually 90% of them, keep most of them from going to seed. And then we know we have a higher level of glyphosate resistance that has continued to develop in the state and almost always occurs in conjunction with ALS resistance, when it doesn't matter what rate you use or how you use glyphosate, you're going to have to use an alternative herbicide or an alternative approach. So the difference between those two is, the first type of resistance is sort of low level. I suspect we have a lot of giant ragweed populations that have that. Sometimes not a lot of changes in the program are needed just to sort of keep it largely from going to seed and tamp down. Once you get to the higher level, all bets are off. You have to do something different. The other thing that happens is we know that it's kind of an interesting phenomenon, but we know that with populations that have especially higher levels of resistance to glyphosate, they often show what's called this rapid necrosis, which is not a symptom of glyphosate. It's like a burning of the leaf tissue that happens within a day or two after application. It can actually, in a lot of cases, burn the plant completely down, as it did in some of these plants, and then you have regrowth coming out the top. So it's not a typical resistance type of deal. So the two populations that I'm showing you here have a couple different responses sort of illustrating that. So the population on the left, right here, is basically showing some of the type of resistance that we found early on, where I call it a lower level resistance, because you can see even 28 days after application, a lot of these plants are stunted and not doing much. And what we found in our field trials working with this type of population is that if you came back with a second dose, you could finish a lot of those off. So you can see here we've got a 1x rate there of glyphosate, and a 4x rate there, really not showing a lot of difference, but they're all sort of remaining stunted and not doing much. That doesn't mean that you might not need an alternative approach for that, and probably the best thing you could do at that point, because you have resistance developing still, is shift to an alternative approach, right? But that's in comparison to this population where it doesn't matter how you manage your glyphosate, you're not going to control it, right? Essentially, you've got a 1x rate here, these plants right here, here's the untreated, 1x plants here that did burn off. You can see the burnt leaves down at the bottom and then just shot right back out the top. Didn't hardly slow them down at all. And you are seeing some response with the 4x rate, but obviously this is a population that we wouldn't recommend you try and approach with just glyphosate. You're going to have to use something alternative, Liberty, FlexStar, some of the new technology coming along, something like that. So the bottom line here is we do have giant ragweed populations that have adapted to glyphosate, and the ones that have a resistance to glyphosate typically are resistant to ALS inhibitors also. We really haven't found any issues with FlexStar or Liberty yet. As long as you plan your programs for giant ragweed management in soybeans, especially if you're still in Roundup Ready beans and not trying to utilize Liberty Link, it's important to know what your response was with glyphosate last time you were in that field. So did you have plants that basically were hammered and you could come back and control them a second time, or they never did much, or plants that really came through pretty unscathed? And so your option there is, if you're basically doing pretty well with glyphosate still and you're seeing control a lot that looks like this, it may be possible for you just to be more aggressive with your glyphosate, to spray earlier the first time with a higher rate and come back 3 weeks after that first one religiously with a second one. And in a population like this, of course, you're going to have to modify that. If you saw this type of a response where you really just chased it the whole rest of the season and never did very well, and glyphosate didn't appear to do much, you're going to have to use a full rate of FlexStar or Cobra in with glyphosate, and then actually spray that a second time. If you're going to you have to use something like FlexStar GT first time, 3 weeks later spray Cobra. Once you have a population like that, something like Liberty Links beans obviously makes a lot of sense. The other bottom line here is that you have a lot of alternatives in corn that don't involve ALS inhibitors or glyphosate for post-emergence control. So take advantage of the programs that you have in corn to make sure you keep it from going to seed there. And then when you come back the next year and put soybeans back in, make sure you know what your response was last time you sprayed glyphosate.